of D.C. is questioning the Trump administration's intentions as it ramps up federalization of the city's police force. Now, at least 6 different states have sent National Guard members to patrol the streets of D.C. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says the president needs to start being more honest about his plans. CBS News Department of Justice reporter, it's Jake Rosen. There he is, joins us from our newsroom. Jake, good to see you, my friend. What is Bowser suggesting the administration's efforts are really all about?
Well, Vlad, yesterday at a press conference, Mayor Bowser said here that she really doesn't make sense to her that thousands more National Guard need to come into the city when it seems like, at least given what she's saying, things have started to be under control, and the organization around what this federal takeover looks like had really started to come to fruition. And she seemed to suggest, Vlad, that the additional law enforcement and National Guard coming into the city is really just about the Trump administration's federal control over the district, moving in National Guard because they can, and also to use these National Guard troops to, yes, protect buildings and such, but also to then use the Metropolitan Police Force here to conduct immigration raids and to assist the Trump administration's immigration agenda. And she said the real solution to this is not some kind of federal takeover or using this Metropolitan Police Force for what the Trump administration wants to do here in removing people who are here illegally, but it's actual real congressional immigration reform, which we have not seen at a national level in a number of years. And she said it's really up to that to actually solve what it seems like maybe the real goal of a lot of this takeover is.
All right. As you know, the critics have described the current security presence and the general feeling in our nation's capital as being similar to an occupation zone. I'm not going to say war zone because war would be what we've seen in Kyiv or worse in Gaza, but an occupation zone where there are soldiers sort of milling about. I remember seeing something similar when I lived in Paris after 9/11, when the military was on heightened alert in that city. So what are you seeing, and what's the status of this federal surge today?
Well, there really is no, as you just kind of pointed out, for the reason of this, there really is no heightened alert for what people here, I think, feel like. In speaking with friends and people who I've met through my number of years in D.C., it seems like people kind of see a lot of this as performative and maybe an overreaction to some extent, although obviously when you're walking around very crowded neighborhoods late at night, not necessarily dangerous, but just places where people go out constantly, it's certainly a relief to see law enforcement moving through the city and driving around maybe on streets that aren't always policed. At the same time, Vlad, we've seen reservation numbers down. We saw the National Mall and parks throughout the city a little less crowded this weekend because I think generally people maybe at the same time as maybe feeling more protected if were they to go out early in the morning or late at night, maybe aren't necessarily as willing to go throughout the city. And I think we've covered at CBS by speaking with local business officials here who are just not necessarily happy with this kind of overarching reach of wanting to go live your life on a Saturday night and having to navigate this new layer of security protections throughout the city.
All right. Tell us about this new lawsuit being filed by D.C. and the other 20 states that are over these White House restrictions on federal grants that help victims of crimes.
Yeah, Vlad, there's a massive fund that the Department of Justice moves to states and to sub-grantees every year. And right now, a lot of that money is actually being held up by the Department of Justice because they say they're not going to give money to these groups or to these states unless these organizations or states comply with the Trump administration's immigration agenda, which is potentially, even though you're giving money to victims of crimes, you're making them make themselves vulnerable, potentially if they're not here legally to be arrested or potentially deported. And the federal government says that they want access to these groups' databases to potentially get access to who is here legally and who's not, and to allow DHS and DHS officers to go on site at some of these group places. The lawsuit that's filed claims by all these states that this move is illegal and goes counter to the Victims of Crime Act, which was put in place to obviously provide some kind of fund for people who have been seriously violently hurt in the country.
All right. Jake Rosen reporting from Washington for us. Jake, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it.